All right, Belinda, thank you. Well, joining us now, the former White House senior advisor and Navy Reserve intelligence officer, Paul Chabot. Well, Biden went to El Paso. I put the air quotes there because they cleaned up a lot, and it was somewhat of a dog and pony show. He probably didn't see what he needed to see. I mean, nobody's going to come up and sell drugs to him, or he wasn't tripping over people in the street. So what would he actually get out of that kind of visit?
Yeah, I think it's frustrating because all of America can see the problems at our border. In our own country, over 100,000 Americans are dying every single year because of fentanyl, largely coming across that border. The president had a huge opportunity, and it was completely missed. I think the cleanup there, the lack of attention to the border, the lack of attention to cartels, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and quite honestly, the perils to American families was left unaddressed. And it was more of a political photo op, but interestingly, I think he's been held somewhat accountable for that being a failed trip. 2 years into presidency, we should be addressing the problems. Instead, they seem to be skirting around them.
You worked for President Bush. You know, he did what he could. There was never an agreement in Congress. They just can't sit down and figure it out. But he did what he could to make sure the border was sealed as best he could. Yeah. Barack Obama actually deported people. Yeah. And President Trump obviously made it one of the cornerstones of his presidency. All of a sudden, though, the last 2 years, Joe Biden gets in and the progressives, and it is inarguably an open border now. And with it comes a lot of big problems that we're not dealing with.
You know, it really is. My dissertation work was on cartels, and when you look at how powerful they have become, not just in Mexico, but all of Latin America, what's dangerous here for our country is the cartels see America as weak along the border. Their cartels now have moved into states that have legalized marijuana, legalized drugs, California, Colorado, and so they're spreading those tentacles, which are very violent. The problem in Mexico and other Latin American countries is that corruption is rampant. Money really is king over there, and our country provides federal tax dollars to these Latin American countries. And we are failing in Congress, we're failing at the presidency to hold Latin American countries accountable for the dollars we're giving them to go after the exact problems that we've been detailing quite considerably for a long amount of time.
And, you know, you've written about this. I'm going to give you a book, Eternal Battle Against Evil. You were prescient about this, and we just haven't been dealing with this issue. I guess it's safe to say the war on drugs has been lost, right? And is it ever winnable? So
we got to look at the problem in more of a cancer, that we're never going to win this war. We're never going to win the war against homelessness. We're never going to win the war on drugs. What we want to do is make the problem smaller. And in America right now, we are completely reversed. Drug usage today is nearly double what it was 10 years ago. So from a drug policy perspective, this administration is completely failing. When you look at the drug cartels, though, you got to give them credit in the sense that they are highly organized. They operate better than most of our Fortune 500 companies. And there is no difference between how cartels are organized from a structural perspective than terrorists are over in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so until we, from a policy perspective, understand that, and the enemy of what we're against, and the 100,000 Americans more so that they're killing every single year, nothing is going to change in this country. But there is a way to address it. We're just not seeing it come out of the Biden administration.
But the El Chapos of the world on the other side of the border are looking at America like, this is easy, right? You know, Title 42, forget it. Remain in Mexico policy, forget it. Even the federal government, our federal government, sued one of our states, Arizona, to take down the barriers. It's becoming easier and easier for them to peddle their wares, which is killing people right here in America.
You know, there is, and when you talk to the ordinary, mother or father, and you ask them today, how many know somebody who's used an illicit drug? Most families today are negatively impacted by this, or they've lost somebody. Well, where are these drugs coming from? Look, Ronald Reagan did it right in the 1980s when DEA agent Kiki Camarena was tortured and killed in Mexico by the Arellano Felix drug trafficking organization.
Narcos.
That's right.
On Netflix.
Great series. Reagan shut down that border, and guess what Mexico did after that border was shut down? All of a sudden, the killers get swept under to American authorities. We need that same willpower in this country to say enough is enough. We're no longer going to have Americans getting killed anywhere. We need to set the example. We can do it, but we're choosing not to do it. And that is what is so disheartening about this as we continue to suffer.
Cocaine back in the 80s was kind of glorified in some respects, right, by Hollywood and everyone else. Fentanyl, I don't think people realize how fatal it is. A grain of sand could kill multiple people.
It is. And so, look, I'm a parent. I've got 4 kids. This is the most important message to parents today, is that You don't necessarily need to worry about your child overdosing off of a drug. You need to worry about them literally losing their lives on that very first try, because you need just a small microgram of fentanyl attached to a legitimate prescription drug, which are traded in our high schools across this community like candy. The best approach that we have that I recommend is drug test. Drug test your kids. And kids will say they actually like to be drug tested because it gives them an out. They can say, I don't want to use this because my parents drug test me. Unfortunately, these are the tools parents have to use because our government is failing to provide for protection along our border to stop these drugs from coming in the first place. So we got to take matters in our own hands.
You know, in the final minute, we've talked about, gangs/drug cartels. Terrorists, they used to fly in, now they're just walking in.
That's right.
And people don't realize, did we learn any lesson from 9/11?
9/11 will be repeated here at some point in history. Terrorists, as we learned in Afghanistan, I served in Iraq, they point to their watches. They have time on their hands. And this time we have to take advantage of in this country to make our country more secure. And if we can't do that along our own property, it's embarrassing, but it sends a signal to our enemies abroad that America's borders are open and porous and allows for an opportunity to harm us beyond drugs, but into terror as well.
Yeah, you're right. They play the long game, decades, and we can't wait for the next TikTok video.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Paul, thank you very much. Scary stuff, but we appreciate you coming here.
My pleasure, and congrats on your show.
Thank you. All right, coming up next, House Speaker